Today, we're taking a look at an awesome update to Apisonic's Speedrum. This is Speedrum 2. I did an extensive review of how to use Speedrum in this video. So I'm going to try to keep this succinct to the new features. We now have an internal sequencer that allows you to build your drum track right in the plugin itself. To the left, we have each pad represented as a track. This section is where you input the note for that track at that time on the sequencer. Mute, solo. Up at the top here, you can change the number of steps. Right now I'm using 32. The speed of the sequencer. A global copy and paste for the pattern itself. And then here you can change what options you have here. So if we click clear, this now gives us the clear option in this column. So each one of the patterns can be cleared globally, or you can clear independent parts themselves. Random, by clicking the dice button either globally or on an independent track, you can add random steps. Once again, clear. Shift allows you to shift globally everything, or you can shift an independent track or pad as needed. You get up to 16 patterns for each instance. You can save the pattern to a file. This allows you to drag and drop your sequence onto your DAW. You can also do real-time recording of the MIDI information from your controller. This here allows you to sync your sequencer to your DAW's tempo, or you can have a separate tempo irrespective of what your DAW is set to. Down at the bottom allows you to change a number of options per note. Velocity is kind of self-explanatory. So select the track that you want to change. You can then change its velocity here. You can change the probability of the note playing or not. It's kind of a random way to give your sequence some life. You can choose to repeat, so it cuts it into pieces smaller than the note itself. And then you have an offset option per note. Reset any of these values by holding the control button and clicking. Down at the bottom, you have a global shuffle option, humanizing the velocity as well as the position, which breathes even more life into your sequence. Pad-wise, we have a number of new options and a somewhat reorganized workflow. We now have 4 options for the wave shaper type that lends itself to giving some grunge or more punch to the sample. For instance, on our kick drum, we can now drive that based off of this selection. So a number of ways to really customize and design your samples. The filter section remains the same. The only change is the way the 2 separate filter types are organized. The compression remains the same. The transient section now has the ability to select soft or hard clipping. The humanize and the velocity section have been separated into 2 separate modules. We have a new filter envelope that has been added that works with this. Where we used to have the pitch envelope, we now have a 4-band EQ with 2 shelves, one low, one high, and then 2 peak in the middle. Of course, you can always move any of the EQs where you so see fit. The usual suspects, we have the waveform view, we have the velocity view, and we have a mixer view. The usual suspects here, however, the pitch envelope has been moved to this section, which used to reside over where the EQ section is now. In the original Speedrum version 1, we did have the ability to do a fade in and a fade out of the waveform. Now we have an MSEG envelope, which you can add several points to really customize how you want the sample to sound. Very useful, including the ability to change the curve. And we have the ability to straighten the curve, or you can use an S-curve. The pitch envelope is activated by clicking this button. Then it allows you to modify the pitch envelope with these figures below. And not to miss it, the stretching by pitch is here. We looked at the sequencer here, and this shows you the overall sequencer for all of the pads, but you do have the option to do just the pad that you currently have selected. So if I go back to pattern 1, this shows you the same sequence that is in the global sequencer that is located here. We now have a mixer for all of the pads that are in Speedrum. And it is here that gives you a second place to change the output of your pads. So I usually would change it here, but you can also go down here and do the same in a much more intuitive way without necessarily having to select every pad to change the designation for its output. If you hold down the control button, we'll do it on these unassigned pads, you can change the output of those selected pads all at once. The slicer option is still available in here, just reorganized in a more intuitive manner. We have buses added to the plugin, as you may have seen, that allows you to group similar samples together to then process those samples as one. And of course, that can be sent out as well. And each bus gives you the 4 effects that you get on each pad, as well as the master. Same 4 effects. So you can really dial in a sound for your drums or whatever you're using Speedrum 2 for. As well, keep in mind that with the original Speedrum, on the master, we only had the compressor and the transients. So now we get the distortion as well as the filter. Over to the left, we can choose between 32 and 16 pads being displayed on the screen at once. When it's on 16, you have 4 banks that show independent of each other. When it's on 32, you get 2 banks at a time, independent of each other. We have now, and I believe when I first did Speedrum 1, I kind of wanted this to be much more intuitive, and to my surprise, it is now. So pressing this button now allows you to simply hit which note you want your pads to be triggered from. Much more intuitive. You can select what pad with whatever key. And if you want feedback from clicking a pad, make sure this is activated. This here resets the round robin, and if you have something that is just stuck, click this to stop all sounds. And that is what's new with Speedrum 2. So you're wondering, well, what does it sound like? This is all Speedrum here, with one exception. For the send to, I chose to send the output to its own separate channel in my DAW to use the reverb that is located there, rather than what's here. This reverb is useful, but I wanted a little more control. Right now there's no low cut filter here, so when I want to clean up the bottom, I don't have an option to do that with. So that's an option to run into your output, and that's why it's there. So in classic fashion, I'll show you exactly what we did with the entire thing, plus some instruments that are not in Speedrum. If you're interested in getting Speedrum 2, check the link in the description. Outside of that,